Hey team, Richard Tubb here with another episode of Tubb Talk, the podcast for managed service providers. Now, a wise woman once said, it's not the strategy that gets you the results, it's the personal power, energy, and mindset you put behind the strategy that will determine the results you get. And in fact, that wise woman was my great friend, Fiona Challis, a very well-known and respected expert in the managed service provider space. And in today's episode, Fiona is going to be speaking with us about how your mindset determines the results you see. Fee, welcome back to Tubb Talk.
Hello, Rick. Nice to be back. And thank you for calling me a wise woman, not a wild woman.
I didn't say a wise old woman. I didn't say a wild woman. I just said a wise woman. There we go.
Well, thank you.
So I say welcome back because it was all the way back in Tubb Talk episode 59, can you believe, that you and I recorded a very popular episode on how to do awesome MSP sales. In fact, I think most MSPs know you for your sales expertise. Yes. But your focus has shifted somewhat. And as friends, we've talked about this. So tell us about that journey. What shifted?
Yes, I mean, when was that episode? How many years ago was that?
Oh, I couldn't tell. Many more years than we care to mention.
Probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been on a bit of a wild journey since then. And I'm sure you've heard of the story of, a goldfish only grows to the size of the bowl that it's confined in. And I've been in the IT industry for, it's over 25 years now, with some of those years in corporate and then 16 years in the sales training company. And I just felt the need to jump out of the bowl. I just felt the need to go and grow and explore and try some other things and go to a new market and explore what's out in the world. And I jumped really into the world of mindset and energetics because I'm passionate about personal development and professional development. So for 2 years, which is the last 2 years, I've really just thrown myself into a completely different field and working mainly with women, actually, rather than men from the IT industry. I'm just really on a journey of wild professional and personal development.
Yeah, amazing. Now, as friends, we've spoken together at a lot of events.
Yeah.
I've learned an awful lot from you about sales strategy and things of that nature from the MSP side. But I've got to say, I've learned a whole lot more from you about mindset and about personal development. And, I'm really passionate about it and been on something of a journey myself over these past few years as well in that area. So you can continue to teach MSPs about sales strategies and marketing strategies. But what I'm hearing is you really want to help MSPs focus on mindset and energetics, as that's what you suggest really generates the results. So how do you describe energetics and mindset to an MSP?
So the easiest way to describe it, Rick, is your energetics is like a frequency. So say, for example, you have a sales team. I mean, I've trained thousands of them across the 16 years. Yeah. You can almost tell which sales teams are going to implement the strategies you're teaching them or not, because you can feel the frequency that they're on. It's like tuning a radio station. If you want to tune into Newcastle FM, you're going to have to dial it to that frequency to tune into it. And it's the same in the world of MSPs. If you want to have success, if you want to have the results you want to have, you need to tune into the frequency of the results you want and tune into the frequency of success. So strategies are really important. I mean, I've been teaching them for 16 years. I know how good they are, but it is the mindset and the strategy and the energetics behind the strategy that will actually determine the results that the MSP gets. Very similar. We've both seen it, Rick, where we've multiple MSPs. You could give all of them exactly the same strategy, yet that you have very different results. Yeah. And that's because of the energetics.
Oh, that makes absolute sense to me. How does mindset directly impact the performance of, let's say, leadership teams within IT companies? What experience have you got with that?
Wow, well, we both have loads of experience with mindset, Rick, and I love our conversations that we always have around it. So for me, mindset has a direct correlation to the results that an MSP is going to get. Before the mindset part, however, you have your beliefs. So the way that I look at it and the way I operate myself, even in my own journey, is I know that my beliefs are going to determine my mindset. My mindset is going to determine the behaviors that I have, and those behaviors are then going to determine the results that I get. So if you want to improve the results in your MSP, there are the key things that I would start to work on with your people. Work on their beliefs. So you're removing the limiting beliefs and giving them more empowering beliefs for success. That will in turn then affect their mindset. So they have more of a positive and more of a growth mindset. And then that will drive the right behaviors in the business. And then that's what's going to drive your results. So it's nice and simple when you look at it that way. I still like to keep things nice and simple.
Yeah, and definitely needs to be as well. I'm going to address the elephant in the room here a little bit, because you and I have had lots of conversations about this topic over the years. And, you know, I'm believer's the wrong words, but I know that this is what you're saying is absolutely true. However, when I introduce conversation topics such as even meditation, which is like scientifically backed and really understood and everything, when I introduce that into the conversation with MSP, sometimes I see their eyes glaze over, and I've sometimes been accused of like, why are you talking about woo-woo topics? You know, that sort of condescending sort of reaction to it. How do you, deal with that and saying, oh, Fiona, let's just stick to strategy rather than mindset, because this all feels a bit woo-woo to me?
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, I do get that, especially with men.
Yeah, for certain.
And to be honest with you, I used to be the same with meditation, because I used to find it very, very hard to meditate because I have a busy mind. I have an entrepreneurial mind. My mind is always on the go. So for me, I had to find a different way for meditation to work. So I actually do walking meditations. I don't do traditional meditations. I do walking meditations every day. So I would encourage anybody where you're thinking meditation is too woo-woo, I would encourage you to look at what are the ways you could make it work for you. Just because other people sit down and do it nice and peacefully doesn't mean to say you have to do the same thing. Meditation is incredibly powerful, but you have to find the way that it works for you. And if you look at any successful entrepreneur, they all do meditation. There is a reason that they all do it, because they know that if you focus on that part, not just the strategy, it's going to take you to a whole new level. The way I look at it, Rick, is if you want to just keep focusing on strategy, that's fine, keep doing it. But only focus on strategy is only going to do one thing, and that's keep you small. If you want to tap into the bigger vision, you got to tap into it through the meditation, through the future self vision, the vision exercises of what that future self in business looks like. And then once you see it, you can believe it. And once you believe it, you can get there. But strategy only will keep you small.
I think so. I absolutely think so. And I think perhaps we don't give the audience of this show as much credit as is due. I'm talking about conversations that I have with MSPs out in the wide world. I know the listeners to this podcast have had feedback and they are craving more on this topic here. So I think your move into talking more openly about this is really, really timely. And I just want to pick up on something you said, the most successful people use meditation. Because this episode, we're not talking just meditation, but I use that as an example of, where people can go, oh, meditation's not for me because it's all Buddhist monks and going home and things. The reality is, Fiona, like you, I have spoken to hundreds of the most successful, top people in the IT industry and further afield. And there's a thread that joins them. They all lean into this sort of thing, meditation and others, understanding mindset. So how should leaders in managed service providers model the right energy and mindset to inspire their teams and the people around them?
I think with leaders, they have to lead from the front, even though maybe they perhaps don't believe in stuff like meditation or meditation practices or mindfulness. Doesn't mean to say that actually their teams aren't going to benefit from it. So I think when you are a leader of an MSP, you have to see things beyond your own world. See yourself outside that goldfish bowl and see what's going to work for others in the team. And just because it's not for you, it doesn't mean to say it's not for them. So be open to having that growth environment for your people and introducing new practices, new methodologies, things that can help them to step into a bigger version of themselves. Because as soon as they do, you're automatically going to step your business into a bigger version of itself as well.
I love that. And of course, we're talking about personal power, but you've just touched upon that. Let's speak about the wider culture of an MSP business. I know you've worked with lots of MSPs, hundreds, if not thousands in the past, about culture and things. So in your experience, how do the culture and values of an MSP truly influence its success or not?
Well, I think it's a huge influence on their success, and the way that I like to explain it, Rick, is, if you have a flower that doesn't bloom, you fix the environment that it's planted in, you don't fix the flower. So when you're an MSP, it's easy to blame maybe lack of growth on your people, but actually it's more than likely going to be the culture that you're creating. And there are lots of different things that you can do within that culture so that you can remove any toxic culture practices that maybe have been in there for some time. Sometimes you might not even be aware of them, and introduce more of a growth culture and a self-led culture where actually you're really tapping into the personal power of your people and actually letting them be a contribution to the company and to the business. I see lots of cultures where it's very micromanaged, it's very top down in MSPs, and actually all they end up doing is destroying the creativity of their people because they're squashing them down just to do a role or just to complete a task. Whereas actually, if you tap into the true power of your people, you see them as equal power but different. So you're both in this together. You're a team, you're a culture, and you're all going in the same direction. But the leader has to set that culture up so that the staff actually follow the leader, and you all both work together towards that joint vision and goal that you have. But the culture part is so important. The culture is created, and it's normally created by the leader.
Okay, let's talk.
It's also squashed by the leader.
Yeah, and I've seen so many examples of that where, and certainly you've probably seen the same, where a leader will take the business to a certain level, but he's not the right person to take it to the next level, but doesn't want to give up on that because of ego and so many other things. But let's talk practically. What are some of the common challenges that MSP leaderships teams they might face in maintaining like high energy, a positive mindset? Because it's easy for you and I to talk about it, isn't it? But we know running an MSP business, there's sticks and arrows, there is all sorts of things that happen on a day-to-day basis. So how can MSP leadership teams maintain high energy and a positive mindset?
Well, I think the first one is to start with the leader. So tapping into the leader's own personal power rather than circumstantial power. So by circumstantial power, I mean, just because you are the leader of a business or you're a manager in a business or a team leader, that doesn't mean to say that you have the power over all of the people in your business. What you're better to do is tap into your own personal power, because what people respect more in a business is a leader who actually sees them, a leader who values them, and a leader who basically lets them be part of the overall team. And I know as a leader, I've been one myself for many, many years, like a team of 120 people when we were working at McAfee, and I know it is hard. I know one of the challenges will be holding that duality of the pressure to hit the number, but then also tapping into your personal power. That's a challenge that all leaders have to overcome. How do you manage personal power in your people when the pressure is on for the numbers? And that's skills and development of the leader that makes that happen. The other challenge, I think, with leaders is being consistent. Yes, you can go on a training course to learn personal power and mindset, and you can come back all fired up for 10 days. But what happens after the 10 days? Are you consistent in your leadership approach? Are you consistent in your leadership practices? Because that's really important with the people in your business. And then I think the other challenge is having that genuine interest in your people. It's not about the numbers. Yes, numbers are important, but if you focus on your people will focus on the numbers. If you focus on your people, your customers will be happy, your clients will be happy. But all too often, and we see it time and time again, Rick, lots of leaders of MSPs, they focus on keeping their clients happy and hitting their numbers. Actually, the part you should be prioritizing is focus on your people and their power, and give them the power to help you take your company forward.
I have observed that in some of the top performing MSPs that I've come across, that the leaders are actually very self-aware. And you and I have talked over the years about self-awareness and things. How would you describe self-awareness to somebody? And, somebody listening to this and going, yeah, I know who I am, but how do you really get onto that surface layer and start to understand who you really are?
I think you need to become more self-led. So go within and actually see yourself as, if I was to ask one of my team members, to describe who I am, what would they say? And another part of self awareness is saying to yourself, am I doing in work the same as what I'm doing outside of work? Because leadership isn't a 9 to 5 job. Leadership is a person that you are. To be a true natural leader, an inspiring leader, it's who you are as a person, not what you do when you're in your business 9 to 5. So I would say to go internal, to see yourself. Who are you in work? Who are you outside of work? Are they congruent? If you were to ask your staff to describe you, what would they say? Would they recommend you as a leader to other people? Because how we see ourselves sometimes is not how your staff see you. And the trick is to make sure the two of them are the same.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who's listening to this and perhaps they've gone away, reflected on some of the things that you've shared, and they've looked inside themselves and not liked what they saw, or they thought there's plenty that I want to change for the better here. What's the balance, Fee, between self-awareness and just beating yourself up for what you don't like seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there's self-awareness and self-sabotage, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, if you are listening to this and you've become self-aware, I would say congratulations, because actually becoming aware of something is the very first step to changing it. And, we all change stuff in life. We all grow, Rick. We all evolve, and who we were 10 years ago isn't the person that we are today. We have to grow. We have to evolve as a person. So if you don't like what you see today, all that is a sign. I always see it as a sign. It's a catalyst that could actually catapult you into a whole new era of growth and personal development, and it would actually catapult your business in a whole new direction as well. So I would see it as a good thing. If you're listening to this and that's popping up into your head thinking, should I improve as a leader? I'd say congratulations, you're on the first step. That's your catalyst to catapulting yourself into a whole new area of growth.
And I mentioned earlier, you speak with hundreds of MSPs. You've spoken with thousands over the years, probably, your role, sales strategy, but now, leadership mindset as well. Without betraying any confidences, can we give our audience some examples, perhaps a story where changing mindset and energy has significantly improved an MSP's outcomes?
Oh, you're asking me to snitch.
In a very polite way, give us an inspirational story of where it's worked for the positive, and no need to mention any names, of course.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we were teaching MSP Sales Mastery, Rick, which was the signature kind of program that we launched for MSPs, that was all actually based on changing mindset, because what that program was all about was teaching MSPs to stop selling technology. And to make the mindset shift and start selling the actual service that you were giving. So that was a big shift for a lot of those MSPs to make. I mean, over 500 MSPs came through that program and their staff. And we had to make a huge shift to get them to think differently, to stop selling the products that they had, and instead to start selling the business outcomes of what their customers got when actually they were using their services. And that took a huge shift. But the results, Rick, were massive. I mean, we had MSPs that were tripling their recurring revenue in 3 months. And even with one of the huge vendors that I worked with, kind of the biggest ROI I got is within 6 months of changing to selling products, to selling as a service, and getting everybody to make the culture, everybody to make that mindset shift, we generated over 56 million in sales. So that's probably my highest that I've ever got in an ROI.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And we talked about the positive, and I know you've shared both publicly and with me, some of those case studies or looks at how MSPs have changed as a result of this. But on the flip side, can we go a bit dark here? Can you give us any examples of where you've seen poor leadership energy hinder an MSP company's growth?
Oh, you're definitely trying to dig some dirt.
Well, we're friends. I will do this to you.
Let me see. I have definitely 100% seen some poor leadership.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of how it hinders an MSP's growth? And again, no need to mention specific names, just examples of what they're doing or not doing.
I tell you, the biggest thing I see, Rick, that is such a poor leadership skill is micromanagement. So really controlling their people rather than letting them be creative and letting them tap into their own personal power. Especially in those smaller companies, it just feels like it's the leader banging the stick and telling people what to do, but they're not doing the same themselves. And that's really off-putting for a member of staff. I mean, when you look at it, the number one reason that people actually leave a business, especially leave an MSP, since we're talking about MSPs, is not because they're not happy, it's because of the leader. Yeah. So if the leader has poor leadership qualities, if they are micromanaging, if they're not letting their staff be seen, heard, or creative or valued, those staff members are then going to end up leaving. Probably the biggest thing that drove me mad, Rick, if I'm honest, with leaders and MSPs, is sometimes we'd be running training programs for all of their teams. And I always had a policy, you know, this is an interactive session, it's cameras on, it's let's talk to each other, it's let's calibrate with each other, let's connect with each other. Yet very often the leaders would turn their cameras off and say, oh, I can't do it.
Oh, yeah.
And I always knew when I had a leader in the MSP business that did that, I always knew those guys are going to have serious culture problems, because it's okay for the staff to do it, but it's not okay for the leader to do it.
Yeah, it's a
and
great
that
example.
Used to drive me nuts.
It does. A great example of do as I do, not do as I say, not do as I do, which is just not good leadership, is it?
It's awful. It's awful. And even the micromanagement part of it, I mean, that's probably the most destructive leadership quality to have in an MSP. Because actually, if you think about it, your business will work so much better if you can create employees that are self-led. You know, people who are allowed to step into their power, because it makes your job as a leader so much easier. Yeah. You know, if your people can actually really contribute and they feel valued in the MSP, it makes leading people so much easier.
Yeah. I'll share with you openly, I've had some pushback within my team recently, certainly not on micromanaging, but we're a big business based on like checklists and things like that. You know, I'm a great believer in consistency, doing the right things in the right way. I've had some pushback from the team recently saying, hey, we've got too many, you know, we don't need this checklist. I know what I'm doing and things like that. And so I'm very concerned about not micromanaging, but at the same token, I want to maintain a certain level of consistency and, you know, professionalism. What would you say to MSPs listening about that balance between micromanaging everything the team does, but also putting guidelines in to make sure that things are done the right way?
Yeah, that's a great observation, Rick, actually, and a great observation from your team as well. And especially within this industry, within IT, I think most people in this industry are very process driven. Yeah. So, you know, most of the MSPs that I work with, they became an MSP owner because they love the process of managing other people's technology and they love checklists. Have you noticed they love a process, they love stages, and they love checklists? Yeah. So I'm not surprised that you love all of them. However, when you focus on your people, not process, and not the checklist, your people will make the process better. So you do actually have to learn to trust them. You have to learn to trust them that if they say they're able to do it, give them the opportunity to do it. Because if you have employees where they feel like their contribution is valued, they feel like they're being recognized because they're able to do it, you will have a much happier team member who will actually probably then go on to create even better processes in your business. Let them create rather than control.
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
Thank you. That's good advice. And that makes a lot of sense. I'll say thank you. Listeners will understand now. I often, on these calls with experts like yourself, Fee, ask questions about my own business to get a bit of free consultancy while I'm doing it. But there we go. You know my tricks. So.
And, you know, I used to love a to-do list as well, Rick. I was the same, but I've actually stopped doing them. And what I do now instead is I have a to-be list. So how do I want to be today? How do I want my day to end? How do I want to feel at the end of it? And if I focus on that, then I do all the right things to make it happen naturally. But to-do lists were literally one of those lists for me where it would be long list. I'd check off stuff and think, oh yeah, I've made some progress. But then I'd keep adding more stuff onto the list anyway.
Yeah.
And it used to drive me nuts. So I stopped doing it. And now I have a to-be list every day.
I love that. And it's clear to any listener, your enthusiasm, your own personal energy, and what you put out in the world there. But what does Fiona Challis do to maintain that level of positivity, that energy, positive mindset? What do you do, Fee, to keep this going?
Well, for me, I mean, I've kind of changed my whole routine in life. I mean, it's hard to say this, Rick, but seriously, my whole life and my whole business has completely transformed and changed in the last couple of years because of my focus on energetics and mindset, and because of embodying everything I'm teaching myself. So, as an example, my day always starts now with movement, because movement changes your state. So either I'll go for a walk or I'll go to the gym. And if I'm stuck for time, I do a walk in meditation rather than do a separate meditation. So for me, my mornings always start exactly the same way. You have your movement, you have your meditation, and then you have your moments of gratitude. So for me, my whole day always starts with, what am I grateful for today? I'm being thankful for everything that's going really well in my life, thankful for the people, thankful for my business, thankful for my customers, thankful for everything that's going good. And then I also have one foot in desire, which is where the future self meditation comes in. So what do I want to achieve in the future? And I think for me, the biggest lesson I learned in the last couple of years, Rick, is to always walk with one foot in gratitude and one foot in desire. And when you do that, you'll have an equal balance. Your mindset will be clear. You'll be clear on where you're going. You'll be thankful for what you've got. But one foot in gratitude, one foot in desire, and it takes you to where you want to get to. But it's a practice, Rick. This has to be a daily practice. It's not a woo-woo, let's do it for once and see how it goes. It is a daily practice that you have to embody into your business, which is exactly what I've done. And anything I teach, I do myself.
Yeah, exactly. Another great example of leadership there. You can't expect other people to take it on board if you don't do it yourself. I know from the messages I get from listeners to this show, a lot of people have embraced many of the good habits that you've talked about, going out for a walk, perhaps not even at the start of the day, they use this as a break during the day, listen to the podcast while they go out for a walk in the sunshine, get a bit of fresh air. And it, very nice feedback from people saying, hey, it gives me a boost to get back there.
Yeah.
I also hear from people, and it's typically towards the end of a day, they've started a day with great intentions. And then we both have worked in the managed service industry for so long. All sorts of things hit the fan, all sorts of commitments come in, all sorts of challenges come in throughout the day. What would you say to anybody who has maybe started the day with good intentions, are doing the right thing, but then potentially get discouraged later in the day by things that have happened?
Yeah, and that's again a really good question, Rick. And it does happen all the time. And that's why learning to lead in duality. So the duality of when things go good, great. But what about when the shit hits the fan?
Yeah.
How do I hold myself? How do I hold my personal power? And how do I hold my team? And that all comes back to training yourself to have massive personal power, so that even if your day starts off great at the start, you're still able to cope with things when they don't go wrong. And look, Rick, we are entrepreneurs. We are business owners. It is no plain sailing. You are going to have days where the shit hits the fan. It's how you are and who you are as a person when that happens that will get you through it. But also it is coming back to, well, hang on, yes, something did go wrong, but what did go well?
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to beat yourself up when things go wrong, but what about what went well?
Yeah. For me, journaling is a huge part of that. When I journal at the end of every day. And again, some listeners are going to listen to this and go, you keep a diary. That's so woo-woo. It really isn't. I have spoken to so many successful leaders who talk about journaling. And I'll give a specific example, if I may, Fee, where it's helped me, where I've had an awesome day. And then 5 minutes before the day closes, the business day closes, I get an email from a troll or from, somebody with negative energy, and it throws the day off. And you're like, this has been a crap day. And of course it hasn't. But then when I sit, loads of good stuff has happened, but we as humans tend to focus on that negative thing, don't we? But then at the end of the day, when I've got my journal and I've started writing in it, what are the good things that have happened today? And I've got very good at zoning in on these. And I always try to write 3, but sometimes I'll write 5, 10 brilliant things that have happened that day. Oh, and the one crappy thing. And it sort of reminds you, doesn't it? Hey, I might have been focused on that negative thing, but it shouldn't overshadow all the good stuff, all the good progress that I've made that day.
Exactly. And one of the things that I do is I also do the journaling as well, Rick, and it's really, really helpful because if you're having something that's happened throughout your day, the worst thing you can do is stay stuck in your head. Because if you stay in your head, you're dead. So for me, the journaling really helps with that, where you're journaling, yes, what went well, but also when something doesn't go well, you can also journal with that as well and ask yourself, now what? I know I'm always going to be able to sort this out. So now what? And just look for the other ways to make it go from a problem into a potential opportunity. And again, engage with your team. Leaders don't have to hold all of these bad things themselves. Have a conversation with your teams. Has anybody got any suggestions? How could we make this client happier? What could we do to resolve this situation? But the worst thing you can do is keep it to yourself and keep it in your head.
Really good advice.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring, but lots of MSPs will not feel that way. They'll feel like, we both know being an MSP business owner can be a really lonely, tough job. And so we talk about the value in peer groups and working with your peers and things like that. That can really help. But what I'm hearing is, sharing with your team as well shouldn't be overlooked, because that can be a powerful way of sharing. Yeah.
Exactly, yes. And and I think as well, especially in the MSP industry, Rick, where you're selling services, you're serving other people, but you also have to serve yourself. If you serve yourself first, you'll be able to serve your customers even better. But take the time. It's not woo-woo. It's not fluffy stuff. You are a business owner. You are an entrepreneur. You are a leader, and you need to care about yourself as well as care about your customers. Because when you're in a good place, you're able to sort any problem that comes your way. When you're in a good place, you're able to take your team to a good place. When you're in a good place, your business goes to a good place. So it's not fluffy and woo-woo. It's essential. It's an essential part of being an entrepreneur. But unfortunately, what we see too often is too many people just focusing on growth and strategies and trying to get the business to the next level. Or to be honest, even some MSPs, Rick, I see them, they go to work, they go to their work, they go to their business every day. They feel like they're wearing a pair of lead boots, because they're just not in a good place for it. Swap around and give yourself some time. I promise you, if you were to focus on serving yourself for 6 months and you were to implement these practices for 6 months, you would be in a completely different place in your life and in your business in the 6 months.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, the life part of that, because up until now, we've talked about MSP leadership. We've talked about business challenges. I can't help but think that when you start implementing some of the changes that you teach your MSP clients about this, surely they've got to see a significant impact on their personal life as well. And before you answer that, I'm going to say, Fiona, and I'm going to put it out there because it's a really difficult subject for some people to talk about. I speak to MSPs all of the time who haven't got time to take sick leave. That's what they say to themselves. Their relationships are being damaged at home, with partners, children, family, friends, because they're giving all of themselves to the business. So tell us about some of the changes that you've seen in clients, MSPs that you've worked with to make these changes ostensibly for the business, but then it's worked in their home life as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, one of the biggest things I teach, Rick, and it's so, so important, is how to live in alignment. So alignment where you have a life and you have a business that are in line with each other. Now, I'm guilty myself. And one of the reasons I changed my business in the last 2 years is my business felt like it was out of alignment. I wasn't enjoying it the way that I was enjoying it before. I kind of lost a bit of my spark, if I'm honest. I'd lost a bit of my spark in what I was teaching. And I knew it wasn't me. I knew there was more to me, and I knew there was more I could do. But when you are feeling like that, when you feel you haven't got time to take a day off, when you feel you haven't got time for your family or you haven't got time for anything else, it's a big trigger and a big red flag in your business to say your business is completely out of alignment. So one thing I would advise you to do if this is going on in your business is take yourself right back to the start. Why did you set a business up in the first place? What did most of us set our businesses up for? Freedom. Freedom is the number one thing. Freedom to do what you want to do, work when you want to do it, fulfillment in what you're doing, and financial abundance as a result. If you are missing one of those, you need to go right back to the start and say, what can I do to have more freedom in my business, more fulfillment in my business? And as a result of that, you will get the financial results at the end. Money is always the byproduct, Rick, of the person you become on the journey. It is not the journey.
Yeah.
So you've got to a little bit of a crossroads if that's happening to you. And there is no business worth not being with your family for. There is no client worth not spending time with your children for. So I would say take it as a big red flag. Sit back and ask yourself, what's really important to me? What do I want to spend my time and energy on? And how do I go about fixing it? Will you be able to fix it overnight? No. But you will be able to start fixing it once you become aware of it. And once you make a decision that you set this business up for freedom and fulfillment, and that is your number one priority. And that's why I changed mine, Rick. You know, I felt I was feeling trapped. I was feeling unfulfilled. So I thought, no, this is just not me. This is not the life I said I was going to live. So I changed it. And it's the best decision that I ever made. And the good thing is, and I can practically guarantee this to any MSP that is going through that, when you take that step back and you say, I am going to completely realign my business. I'm going to reignite my passion back for my business again, and I'm going to reinvent it so that actually it serves me as a human being, not just as a business owner. And when you do that, I promise you, you will end up catapulting your business into a whole new era. You think you're going to lose time and you don't have time to do it, but I promise you the best thing you can do is give yourself time. Make the time and your business will change. You're keeping yourself stuck by saying you don't have time. You're not stuck. You're just out of alignment.
Wow. That is
I get very passionate about it.
And it shows through, and was well you might be, because you and I have done this for a while now, and we've seen people whose lives are just ebbing away. You know, you can see the soul sort of leaving the body at some point. Soul destroying, because you know they feel as though they're in a prison of their own making. So what you just said is absolutely powerful. I'm going to give a challenge as well to our listeners. If you're listening to this, and if this makes you feel uncomfortable or this strikes a chord in any way, reach out to Fiona or somebody like Fiona. Have that conversation, because as you say, that discomfort is often a red flag, isn't it, for something needs to change.
You know, but the cool thing is when you see the discomfort, you have two choices. You can either take it as a sign to say, my business is shit, I'm just going to burn it to the ground, I'm just going to walk away from all of it. Or you can say, actually, this is a really fantastic opportunity for me to reinvent this business and myself and take my life back to where I want it to go in the future. It's a choice. But, you know, you are on an entrepreneurial journey, and this journey is not linear. You know, you should expect as a business owner, you will have pivots. You will have plot twists in your story. You know, every story has really good plot twists in it. And you will have to adjust as you go along in your business, because what served you maybe to get to 6 figures is not going to serve you to get to 7 figures. What worked for you last year might not even work for you this year. So you've got to be ready as a leader and as a business owner. You've got to be in a good place where you're able to make those mental shifts, and you're able to make the changes and course correct when you need to. Course correcting your business is a natural part of being an entrepreneur. It's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of success. It's a sign that your business is going in a new direction and it needs to course correct. So all you have to do is look at it in a different way. Do I need to course correct? Do I need to pivot? Or what kind of plot twist is my business going to give me today? And how do I turn the story around?
Yeah. I love that. And I always go back to the analogy about, airplane pilots when they're flying
Yeah.
somewhere. Well, they don't just get there in a straight line, do they? They are constantly professionally making course corrections to get to their
Yeah.
intended destination. So, yeah, it is not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign of failure for you to go, this ain't working the way it is. Does it need to be
Yeah.
tweaked? Does it need to be wholeheartedly changed? And that. So, I'm
Yeah.
I'm in, I'm really intrigued as well. We've talked about lots of things that MSP listeners can do. What about those people who reach out to you directly? I'm guessing, Fee, there's not a typical engagement that you have with MSPs over this type of work. But if I could use paraphrase, what is a typical engagement? What does the work that you do with MSPs, what does it look like?
So with MSPs, I kind of haven't worked with MSPs for the last 2 years because I've actually been working more with female entrepreneurs. But I'm just about to come back into the industry again, and I'm coming back in as a mentor. So how it looks like to work with me is more of a mentorship container where it's either working with me one-to-one or it's working in a calibration with lots of other MSPs, a bit like where we had with all the groups we used to have before, a mastermind plus a mentorship experience. And actually that works really well because you're getting to learn with other MSPs as well. So I'm going to be bringing in one for leaders where it's more mentorship for the business owners and leaders. And then we're just in the middle of finishing creating MSP mindset mastery. So we had MSP sales mastery, and now we're in the middle of completing MSP mindset mastery, which will be for your people and for your teams.
Yeah, I love that approach. And thank you for coming on and giving us one of the early peeks into your new direction into this, because it is much needed for the MSP industry. It's much needed for society as a whole.
Any business.
But you and I know we love the MSP industry. So, that's where we are focused. I think you're going to make a big impact here. And I know there's going to be lots of people listening who what we've talked about today really strikes a chord with them. So, what advice would you...
I hope so. I can see how it's changed my life and business. So I'm really keen to come and help others to do the same. So anyone who's feeling stuck, let's get you unstuck.
Yeah. Before we go, what advice would you give to newer MSPs about building strategy that incorporates those elements? Because you and I have talked about established MSPs a lot. I know there's a big audience of MSPs who don't even really talk about managed services. They're perhaps new to the industry and are building the business they want. You've given them a lot of advice about how to build it the right way, but what advice would you give to newer MSPs about building strategy that incorporates these elements over the long term?
I would suggest that you put 80% of your business plan based on mindset and energetics and 20% on the strategy. Because I can guarantee you, if you do the mindset and the energetics of your business first, any strategy you implement will work.
Yeah.
We normally do it the other way around, don't we? We do what's the business strategy? What's working for everybody else in the industry? Therefore, it's going to work for me. Just because it worked for somebody else doesn't mean to say it's going to work for you. Honestly, I would suggest have 80% mindset and energetics, and then let's look at the right strategies to take you to where you want to get to. And when you're building a business from the start, I've just rebuilt mine in the last 2 years. When you do it that way, then you have a business you love again. You have a business you're excited about, your passion's in it, you'll begin to love what you're doing again, but do it right from the start. So you're lucky if you're just starting.
Life is too short to be slugging away every day. We need to be having more fun. And it can be. I talk sometimes on the show about how when I'm doing writing or podcast interviews or videos, I get into what they call the flow, which is where I don't notice the time go. I know you've experienced it as well. And it just sort of pours through you. You enjoy it. And it's not work at all. You're just there and it's just happening. It's what you were meant to do. But far too many people I speak to, they're slogging every day. And life is too short for it, isn't it?
Not worth it, Rick. It's just not worth it. We set up a business for freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Freedom and enjoyment, not to be stuck to it. So it's just not worth it. Make the change.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came on and talked to us about this today. I know it's going to be a challenging topic for some listeners, but for others, we've got a global audience here, and I get emails and text messages and instant messages from people all over the world talking about some of the topics that we've just touched upon before. And this is one we've only ever touched upon before, Fee. So thanks for coming on, elaborating, expanding upon it, and giving us, insight into your wisdom as well. I strongly suspect, I'm going to put it out there now, I strongly suspect if we revisit this episode in, say, 3 to 5 years, this is all going to sound like common sense to people. And they're going to go, well, of course, that's the way you build a business. Yeah. But right now, where we're here, you are at the cutting edge of it with it, and you're introducing new topics and subjects and concepts to the MSP industry. So thank you for doing that. But I think you're going to be seen as one of the trendsetters here.
I hope so. But, this isn't a new concept. Energetics and mindset isn't a new concept. It's just not a very well talked about concept in the MSP or the IT industry, because we're so used to doing what we've always done. We're so used to just focusing on the strategy and building businesses. Build the person behind the business, and the business will look after itself. So I would say to anybody listening to this, if you think it's all rubbish, if you think it's all woo-woo, just ask yourself one question. What if it did work? What if it even improved my business by 1% every day? Where would your business be in 3 to 4 years when we look back at this podcast? What if it did?
Fee, you got me right there. I think you're going to get listeners as well. You are awesome at what you do. Thanks so much for your time today. How can MSPs engage with you to discuss some of these high concepts a little bit further? How can listeners find you online?
Yeah, so most of them are all connected with me on LinkedIn. So send me a DM on LinkedIn and let's have a chat and let's see where we can evolve together.
No worries. Well, I'll include all of your contact details, including LinkedIn, of course, in the show notes for this show, which you can get from tublog.co.uk. And as for you, our listeners, please, if you're listening to this while out walking a dog, in the car, whatever you're doing, I am fascinated to hear your feedback on this episode, because as I said earlier, and I'll share with you, Fee, I've had lots of emails from listeners who have picked out on little subjects that we've just touched upon in previous episodes, and we've gone deep on it this time around. So, but I'm really fascinated to hear what you think. So my email address is richard@tublog.co.uk. Drop me an email address and say, hey, listen to the episode with Fiona. Here's my thoughts on it. I'm absolutely fascinated to see how this lands with the MSP industry, Fiona, and I'll share some of that feedback with you as well.
Perfect. And happy to jump on a call and discuss it with anybody as well. So, and thank you for having me on, Rick. Really grateful for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Fiona. Hey folks, Richard here. Thanks for listening today. I know you've got a ton of options for who you listen to nowadays, so I really appreciate your support. Do you have any feedback on this episode? Ideas for future guests? Tweet me at Tublog using the hashtag TubTalk. I respond to every tweet and really appreciate your feedback.